All right, so I didn't get to attend any car shows this weekend, unfortunately. I think there weren't really anyone. There was like one good one, and it was a day I had to go help my sister out. For some reason, every car show is like in the first weekend of October, which is when I might be going to Duct Tape Drags in Tucson. I think I talked my friend into going to that, and I may be going. I'm going to try to get my Mustang ready for that. Unfortunately, the fuel pump went out in that while my sister was driving it. It's over at her house, so I have to go over there and get it towed out of there because it's on her driveway's like on a steep hill. I can't do the fuel pump there, and I'm gonna have to tow it over probably to my mother's house to do it because I don't have any room here in my driveway. So that's kind of where this channel's going. Everything's just broken. But for this week, a couple weeks ago, I did a video from the vintage Vespa days in Los Gatos, and a couple people asked me to do a couple more scooter videos. So I've got my 1962 Vespa GS160. I've owned this bike since 2010, so I've had it 11 years, and it's a very rare one. It actually won the second in the 1960s class at the rally last week, mostly because it's an all original bike, which they're getting kind of hard to find in original condition. But we're going to check this bike out, and let's go. All right, so this is a Grand Sport 160 Mark 1, so it's the GS. They also made the Super Sport. Now the GS model came out in the mid-50s, I believe in 55, with the GS 150, and then about 59 and 60 they switched to the GS 160 Mark 1, which is what you see here, and this is actually a 1962. This is right at the tail end of the GS 160 Mark 1. The Mark 2 had some differences, which I'll explain. As Vespas go, the GSs are generally like the most collectible ones because they're vintage. They've got the larger motors. This was like sort of like the sport model, if you will. So as you can imagine, they were more expensive, and so they're quite a bit rarer. And this one's sporting all the original paint. It's got a few ding scratches, things like that. It says the original CM headlight ring. These were not available for a long time. You could only get the ones without the stamping. Someone's actually reproducing with the stamping now, but this is an original headlight ring, original headlight glass, which I need to put like a rubber seal in there. You see it's all original badging, everything. They don't reproduce these Piaggio badges that look like this. They look completely different on the reproductions. That might have changed since I really was doing a lot of Vespa stuff, but people always like to see the original badges because they have like kind of like a plastic, and you can imagine they turn pretty easily. And this one's actually still in good condition. I said it's very original, unrestored. This is the way I like them. It's got the original grips on it, original switches. Now, if you've never ridden a vintage Vespa, on the right side, this is your front brake. The left side, this is not a brake. This is not like riding a newer automatic scooter. This is actually your clutch, and then if you look here, these are your gears. So you twist this, so where the dash is between first and second is actually neutral. So it's first, neutral, second, third, fourth. And these are a 4-speed bike. The GSs were all 4-speed. A lot of your smaller Vespas were 3-speed at this time. Later on, I think most of them went to a 4-speed, other than like the small frames. But in these, like your 125s were a 3-speed, which is mostly what you find when you find vintage Vespas. It says the original, what's left of what's called the running in sticker, and it explained like your break-in procedures, and they reproduce it, but it doesn't look like this anymore. They're just like I don't know, like almost on a plastic base. So this has the original decal, or what's left of it, which is really nice to see, which tells you it's an original paint bike. Got the original key, original column lock. That's not an original keychain, of course. That was one that was added later on. But as you can see, very original bike. This is the original seat, but it does have a newer seat cover on it because the original ones used to just disintegrate. So the seat frame is actually original, which a lot of times these are missing, because a lot of people that didn't know probably in the 90s used to just replace the entire seat. But fortunately, I've got the original seat frame. The GS tanks and Super Sport 180 tanks were raised here, as were the rally tanks. So that's one way to tell if it's a GS SS or rally tank. It has the raised It's this is completely flat on most Vespas, but see, it's raised on the GS and Super Sport. Now the Mark 1 GS was the only model that came with the glove box on the back. It's not very big in there. There's only a limited amount of stuff you could put in there, and they had problems where the doors would pop open and stuff like that. So it was really a bad idea. So this is the only Vespa that came with this door on the back, was the Mark 1 160. On the Mark 2, they actually put a giant glove box here, or not giant, but a bigger glove box here. Some Mark 1s have, they added the GS Mark II glove box, which if you go back and look at the video I shot at the Los Gatos event, my friend Gabe has a Mark 1 that had the glove box added behind the leg shield, and that was like a lot of dealers did that. This bike has the original tail light, original lenses, and it was originally sold here in Pasadena, and it has the black license plate, the 63 issue black plate. That's not YOM. That's the original plate from this bike from way back when. And this bike was always in the computer as far as I know. Story on this bike is that a guy named Mark Kaufman used to run a shop here in Pasadena called Scooters Bellissimo over on Colorado Boulevard. It was all vintage Vespas and Lambrettas. And some guy came in and said, hey, I've got one of those in my garage. And the story is that the guy who had it, he bought it for his son. His son died in Vietnam, and he just kind of stashed it in the garage. And then years later, he wound up selling it to Mark Kaufman at Bellissimo. He got up and running, driving, and riding around. Sold it to a guy who owns a restaurant called Fred 62 in Los Feliz here in the LA area. He had it a while. I don't know how much he rode it, but he wound up trading it to another guy I know who's into vintage scooters. He wound up trading it to me for a 1964 Lambretta TV200 scooter I had. It was a complete basket case. I mean, I basically got a running, rideable, all original GS160 in exchange for a TV200 that needed basically everything, a complete restoration. And I've had it, and he's actually been trying to get this back off of me since, but this is definitely a keeper for me. I always like this bike. It runs great, it rides great, everything. I mean, I rode it, I probably put a couple 100 miles on it at the scooter rally a couple weeks ago. So these have the spare tire under the passenger side, the left side passenger side, whatever that is. That's a car thing. Okay, it's a little early for that, but see that metal cover there that covers up the spare tire. These have exchangeable tires because it's a single-sided hub and single side on the back. So if you have the tool, you can actually change a tire on the side of the road if you need to. And these are a tube type 10-inch tire. So let me see if I can get the panel off. I don't know if I could do this one-handed. So they have little clips here. So and this pops up, and this one comes off. And you can see I keep an extra bottle of oil there because it just doesn't fit in the compartment there. And on European models, there would actually be a battery right here. That little tray there is for a battery. The US models did not come with a battery, and this does not have a key. There would be a key right here on a European model with the battery, which this one does not have. And that's how they came for the US market. Also, the Mark 1s in Europe all came where this back here was rounded off, whereas on the US ones it's squared off, which the Mark II GS160, those were all squared off. That was when Vespa went to the flat back where the license plate goes. Earlier ones would have a bracket that the license plate would mount to. So that's kind of neat. So it's good to have a spare tire. I mean, how many motorcycles out there have spare tires? I mean, they just don't. So that's kind of neat. Coming around to the engine side. So this one's a little dirty. I haven't really detailed it out for anything. I didn't even really clean it up much for the scooter show. I wasn't expecting to win anything. Fortunately, somebody had went down on this side. Not me, but somebody had fallen off of this one at one point. All right, so with the cowling off, you can see the engine. This is the Mark 1 airbox. The Mark 2s actually have a different size styled airbox. as well as the GS. Fortunately, they added somebody added a diode over the years. I think it was when it was found, which basically keeps the bulbs from burning, but it does do its job, even though it looks kind of crude. I'm sure I could probably figure out a way to mount that somewhere else. I just need to do it one of these days. These actually have a certified 16 horsepower at 8,000 RPM sticker. Now that's for the state of California. That's how you know this was sold new in California, because that was for CHP. If you got pulled over on the freeway, you could show the sticker and let them know that this bike was actually legal for freeway use. So, and back then back now they say anything 150cc and above is legal. Back then it was by horsepower, so they certified they had enough horsepower to get on the freeway, and it needs to be cleaned. It's got some stuff. I mean, these things get greasy. They're similar to like a Brit bike where you get stuff all over it. Of course, these are points. These are nice because you can actually take the flywheel off, and then when you get all the shrouds and everything off. And these are a lot easier to set the points than on a lot of other Vespas, where that just gives you a little window to kind of get in there with a screwdriver and a feeler gauge. This is your kickstart lever. So you actually do have to kickstart this one. This is before they had electric start on them. And this is actually your shifter cables kind of hanging out. Had a little hole for them to stick out of the back. That's your shifter box. So which engages the transmission. These are actually, they don't have a chain or everything. Everything's in one unit. It's all geared. No chain, no belt, nothing like that. Then your exhaust is kind of hanging out under there. One neat feature, a lot of Vespas have this though. It has the hooks. You can actually hook a bag or a helmet or something like that. This has the original lever for the fuel tap. So this is C is closed, up is on, and then there's a little R there. R is for reserve. So that's your reserve tank for the fuel. This is your choke. So when it's cold, you have to choke it when you start it. Since it is carbureted, of course, being a 1962 Vespa. And these are your switches. This is like a kill. You have to hold it down when the engine's running and it will kill the engine. This is like low beam, high beam. This is lights on. There's like headlight on, parking light on, and then off. And then this is your horn button. And it kind of gives off a weird noise more than a horn. And this bike actually only has 8,900 miles on it, which is pretty much what it is, because the speedometer still works. As far as I know, the speedometer's always still worked. A lot of US bikes tend to have low mileage because people bought them kind of as fun toys and things like that, or as like where in Europe they rode them more pretty hard as daily drivers and things like that. So that's my 1962 Vespa GS160. I just decided I'm going to do a video on it, and hopefully we'll be back. Hopefully I'll be hitting some sort of event or something next weekend, getting stuff done. And fortunately I've got a lot of stuff going on with my old shop, which I've got contractors and things like that. So it's been kind of tough to do this stuff, but we're getting there. So until next time, I'll be seeing you.